The year is 1996 and most of you aren't even born yet, but let's say you want to go to an arcade with you and your best friend, and let's say you find Galaga, your favorite game. But then you see this new game, a bloody red cabinet with handprints on the side and a black sheet covering the screen. You know you're probably not supposed to view what's behind it, but your 12-year-old self does it anyway, and this is what you hear.
The House of the Dead.
You see the cutscene of the people running from zombies, the intense music playing, and that phone ringing. So you enter a coin to play, and you're fascinated. Well, this was the start of light gun or rail shooters that were horror themed at this time. Light gun games were decently common, such as Time Crisis, Alien 3, The Gun, or Laser Ghost, and these are just a few to name. And out of those three, I guess only one of them was horror themed, and that would be Laser Ghost, but that is up to you to decide. I don't know if I should include it on the list. Just take a look for yourself. Now, I don't think it would have just fit the list in general compared to the other things we're going to talk about, so I'm going to leave it out for now. And I want to point out I'm mainly going to talk about arcade cabinet involved games, and I'm only going to be talking about one that is not. So if I missed your favorite game or any other iconic ones, shut your mouth. I know there are a lot more horror light gun games out there on console and arcade, so please, if you do want a part 2 of this, maybe I can work that out. If this video does get 150 likes, I would greatly appreciate that. I do also want to say I am so close to 1,000 subscribers, which is so crazy for me to say out loud. And I am very, very sorry for these breaks then and there. Yeah, I know it's a long time. I'm sorry. But content creation is a lot more difficult than I honestly thought, especially with this video type of content. I have to write a script and all that. I can go to a whole rant about that, but I'll leave it as a thank you. Mainly because there is support on this channel like every single day, and hate comments still on my first video because I messed up a lot of the information. Yes, I know, it was 3 years ago. I've been running the channel for 3 years, and that is crazy. Yeah, it's crazy to me. But if you can subscribe, like, share with your friends, and if you like horror themed light gun games like myself as well, go ahead and smack a like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Also, before we start, there will be spoilers to these games because I will be discussing part of the storyline and some of the full story to some of these games. So please, spoiler warning now before you watch. This is it. I'm giving you like a full section. You see that little section on the bottom of the video? It's called spoiler warning for a reason. All right, now we can continue. Let's do this. Chiller was the game made by Exidy in 1986, and God damn, that's the fucking start to the okay. Well, now I don't know if many of you have heard of this game before, but I personally haven't until I started doing some research for it, and dear God, I regret that so much. This was honestly just one of the most disturbing pieces of old media I have seen in a while, and I want to point out that this game was on NES and arcade, but it was imported by a third company, and they're completely different versions of the game, as the NES version, again, was unlicensed and made by different companies in the US and Australia. And the reason was this is because it was just so damn gory. It was so explicit, and I want to point out it was so gory, even with the 8-bit pixelated stuff. I'm just going to show the NES version just so I don't get age restricted. But if you do want to see the arcade gameplay, I'll post a link from a person named Mango Picture in the description, and he'll have the whole video that you can watch. Now, from the very light details given to us in this game, you're a torturer whose goal is to kill everything and everyone, I'm assuming. And that's what it seems like, but again, this is the 1980s, and this was just a start for horror light gun shooters, and the game was basic. Get the gun, shoot the limbs, get the points, done. This game had a very basic plot too. You had 4 levels: the torture chamber, the rack room, the hallway, and the graveyard. The levels are basic, as you had to shoot everything until the monster meter was down to 0, and while doing it was the time given as well. If you finished with extra time, you get bonus points added to the ectoplasmic tabulator. If you get enough points, you get taken to a bonus level, and it's a slot machine where you're almost guaranteed a free life if you win. Now, once you beat all 4 levels and shoot everything, you are taken into this bonus endgame where different entities from the game fly around the screen, and as each level, different entities show and increase the speed every time. Here's the catch though, you cannot miss anything, or that's it, game over, you wasted all your coins. This game obviously did cause some uproar in the 1980s, but not as much as their iconic game called Death Race, and that is an entire different story you can search up, or I can make a video about it. But after the release of this game, not many retailers bought it for the obvious reason, and the game companies did make a few more games, but then the company unfortunately did shut down in 1996. The House of the Dead. A railgun shooter that for some arcade nerds could be in the horror-themed Hall of Fame for the iconic cabinet, storyline, unique designs, and long-lasting series. I'll mainly be discussing the original House of the Dead and not the other 6 or 7 main games that have now came to light. Now, I do want to say that this game right here is the whole reason why I'm making this video. Growing up, I loved this game, and there's a nearby arcade that's free to play and had House of the Dead 2 and CarnEvil, another game I will be talking about in this video later on. But mainly House of the Dead 2 and House of the Dead series just got me so interested. This was definitely one of my new hyperfixations. I learned all the cheesy $1 voice acting dialogues.
To protect the life cycle, I have made a creature to rule over mankind.
And I even played all 7 House of the Dead games, finding every arcade to try to play them all and understand this storyline, including the sad remake. But okay, minus my personal choice on the game, I think this was honestly a huge step in the right direction for light gun shooters. Without going too much into the lore, the first game you play as Rogan and G, and you are trying to stop Dr. Kyrian and save Sophie, who is Rogan's wife, or girlfriend. Kyrian is an evil scientist, and you're trying to stop his mad plan of destroying humanity with his humanoid. House of the Dead has 4 basic levels: Tragedy, Revenge, Truth, and House of the Dead. What makes this game a bit different from others is that there's multiple choices throughout the game by the people you save, the things you shoot, and the points you gain, which all lead to different outcomes of the game. Every level of House of the Dead has a final boss, and all the game's bosses are named off of major arcana tarot cards. In this game, you have the Chariot, the Hangman, the Hermit, and the infamous Magician. And what I personally like about this game is the beautiful boss music. I own the soundtrack and the musician's theme on vinyl specifically just because I think it's one of the most beautiful boss songs in video game. I just love it. Okay, it's so good. But anyways, like other games on this list too, it was subjective to controversy as this game was released in Japan and there was a murder of 2 children in 1997. And Sega made House of the Dead change the blood from red to green. Other House of the Dead, such as House of the Dead 2 and 3 on the Wii, would later implement the option to change the blood color as well in the settings. There was another case in the 2000s where Indianapolis, Indiana tried to ban violent video games where minors should be supervised by adults over 21 plus, but the US Appeals Court found this kind of goofy as the game had a cartoon feel like that was not obscene enough for the thought of a ban. House of the Dead, though, as a game was the highest grossing dedicated arcade game in 1998 in Japan and had sold 8,600 arcade cabinets. This game would most likely be start of popularizing zombie shooting games, even though House of the Dead doesn't like saying zombies, they like saying undead. This game led an amazing series and was remade in 2022 and currently released on Switch but later on all consoles by a third-party company and did okay in reviews and sales, but without the iconic light gun, it's just not a House of the Dead game. Resident Evil. Another zombie game made by Capcom, and this was a shooter but did pan out to be more of a survival horror throughout the series as it did come to light more. And I want to point out that this game was not released on an arcade cabinet at all, but released on the PlayStation and was a third person instead of the iconic first person idea you're used to. You play as Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, and you are exploring an abandoned mansion. Wait, this sounds familiar. As you explore the mansion, you find creatures throughout, and you see that the illegal experiments were happening by a clandestine research team under the team of the Umbrella Corporation. These creatures were created by the T-Virus, and you find the main villain named Wesker, who is a double agent working for Umbrella, and he summons Tyrant, a human. Okay, what the fuck? This just sounds like... Shut up! Let the two games be at peace. Yes, they share a lot of similarities with the mansion, the city plot, and the villain killed by the creation and the virus outbreak. Yeah, I get it. But they both are still very different games from a far point, as this game did very well successfully. As this obviously not being a arcade game where it's set from point A to point B, you must explore the map, and a lot of players were dumbfounded and mainly confused by the really small trigger areas where cutscenes were supposed to start. At the time, this game was great and games were confusing and difficult, and that was just common at the time. But now games are so modernized to where there's Let's Play, and there's even a game remade on this already that happened to be on the GameCube, and the differences are very, very well known. Love or hate this game, the series is probably one of the most well-known zombie horror game/movie series. The game sets up a beautiful soundtrack, iconic characters, memorable monsters, weapon choices, and even multiple endings to this game as well. From this game, it would lead to 6 movies and 13 games, and even the most recent game winning Best Performance in 2021. And again, this wasn't even an arcade cabinet, so hold this thought right now. Imagine how much of this game would change if it was in an arcade cabinet. Hold that thought for later.
When the moon is full and trees are bare, walk through the cemetery if you dare, where skeletons rot and corpses fester. Locate the tomb with the skull of a jester. Feed him the token all shiny and new. It is then that CarnEvil will return for you.
CarnEvil. This is one of another weird ones up there, and also another game I grew up on. This game was referred to as another House of the Dead ripoff or clone, but I don't see it as that as all these shooter games were just very similar itself, and one big game just took the name for all of them. But this game was made by Midway and released on Halloween, and the cabinet definitely showed for that. It was bright, yellow, and dirty, and could be referred to as a circus-themed cabinet. Prior to starting the game, this cutscene shows you on a ghost tour, and the main character is never really revealed or shown, but we do know of this girl named Betty. She is this white blonde that shows up from time to time, and if you shoot her, you lose health, and that's it for her. I don't really know what her importance is, but she's there. Anyways, we find a grave for CarnEvil, or Umlet, which is one of our main protagonists, and as we enter this coin into Umlet, this face jester, this floating head, flies around, and below your feet, this giant CarnEvil summons showing many different evil things, including your main villain, the Token Taker. You start the game with a stage selection, and you have 3 choices: the haunted house, rickety town, or the freak show. And once all these are beaten, you unlock the final level, the big top. And now what makes all of these maps unique is that each map has specific monsters for each level, as the haunted house has basic zombies and the freak show has these weird things called flapjacks. These two can join Freaksting and many other theme related characters according to each map. When you choose another level, our friend Umlet has a rhyme for us during each level.
What goes up must come down. Now you're headed for Rickety Town. Ride all the rides, have some fun, then eat your heart out on a sesame seed bun.
He's just a floating jester head throughout this whole game, and Just like any other light gun shooters, you play through a walkthrough of each level described and fight bosses at the end of each level. And some levels are even mid-bosses, and in one of them is most definitely to be a damn money steal, and that is Hambone. He just lays you down with a railgun. No protection, no nothing. Like, this is just the easiest way to lose money. I do not recommend starting with Haunted House. I think there's a whole fan base on which order you can start with the levels on. But you also fight Hambone once more without the gun, thank God. And you also fight Cyclops. And I will admit, these bosses are definitely unique in their own ways, and even inspired by The Nightmare Before Christmas, told by the creator himself. And that's what just makes this game stand out so more. Minus those small bosses, you have Evil Marie, Krampus, Junior, or Deddy. Junior is basically a giant baby, and some arcade owners found it disturbing for you to be killing a baby, so you can change it to a giant teddy bear instead. But after fighting all three of these bosses, you go to the main boss, which is Umlet, the little jester head, and Ludwig von Tokenbaker. Overall, this game is moderately easy, but what makes this game stand out is that there's so much music to this game. Like, every aspect has music. The maps, the bosses, the mini-bosses, the small parts of the map, the roller coasters, the Ferris wheel. It just makes the game super immersive. As we go down the years, though, we notice these games just get more impressive and talented for these players looking for a fun game to beat. What also makes this game different is that you use shotguns instead of the typical pistol mainly used for every other type of light game. This game was definitely an influential change and a stylistic choice that may have made a different impact for a lot of games going forward. But unfortunately, minus all that cool stuff I told you, the games did still pretty flat. Obviously, there was some controversy for the outfit style of Evil Marie, even including jiggle physics, which, I mean, it's Evil Marie, look at her. Anyways, obviously the baby incident, which I told you about, Deddy, and there was a creepypasta made from this game, which I'll link in the description if you do want to watch that. Haven't actually listened to it. And honestly, this game somehow outsold Mortal Kombat 4, never making a console or official PC release. And obviously it did make an unofficial PC release, but there are CPU errors with that, and as you'll see throughout this list, every unofficial arcade port of a PC game just doesn't work the best it should work. Silent Hill was a game similar to Resident Evil as a survival horror game released in 1999 on PlayStation as well. Silent Hill is a game series that is psychological horror where you play and explore as Harry Mason in this town of Silent Hill. You encounter supernatural entities and you uncover the town's past in a quest to find his adopted daughter. This is just the main plot of the actual game, but there would be 4 more games in the series till where we would lead up to the actual arcade game. Now, this game is a spin-off of Silent Hill, as you play as Eric and Tina, who have entered Silent Hill and are uncovering a mystery behind Eric's nightmares about a steamship. Now, this game, to our knowledge, was very unneeded in the storyline and apparently is just there for fun. This arcade game made by Konami was very stylistic, as the cabinet paid homage, I think, to the classics like House of the Dead, who had the iconic closed curtains to obtain that creepy and hidden atmosphere, which we would see one more game do that below. This arcade game is mainly a mashup from Silent Hill 2, 3, and 4, as it includes music, monsters, and mainly some story stuff related from those games. The game was obviously like the others and does have alternative endings, and again was never ported to consoles, but again was unofficially ported to PC, but like I said before, there were some CPU errors as this mainly happens from arcade ported games. Now keep in mind though, this wasn't a brand new game, this was an idea implemented from a PlayStation series. Remember when I said to Resident Evil? Well, this is what the company did, and it failed. With this game taking an hour to complete and a fresh release, there were lines, many lines trying to play this game, and fans saying the wait wasn't really worth it. A lot of people also saying the game should have just never been implemented. As an intense gun action game from Silent Hill, this isn't really what it was expected. Now, when you had the time to sit down and play the game, it was well worth it, and now the game also did perform really well, with ratings doing really good. But honestly, I could not find much more on this game, and I think there are only 12 public cabinets left that are known in the world. This game, assuming this, exceeded the budget Konami wanted and just continued the Silent Hill series, except on their own terms. Silent Hill led with one more game in the same year, and led with 3 more games and 2 feature films. That did okay at best, but now I guess we know what happens when you try to turn a video game series into an arcade-style shooter. Now we're in 2010, and it's been nearly 26 years since the first game on the list, and it's on a huge horror arcade cabinet where you can't miss it. It's calling your name. It even has warnings on the curtains outside the game, and prior to the start of the game too, it warns you that you must not have these certain things to play it. But why release it on an arcade cabinet if you can just release it on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation? Well, keep in mind, this is still the 2010s and 2012s, and VR hasn't gotten that far yet, and while Dark Escape 4D, made by Bandai Namco, was different and something else in the light gun horror community that I don't think has ever been seen before. It has a 4D element. It has the options of 3D or 2D, a full console cabinet with air fans, vibrations, surround sound, and even a heart rate monitor to keep track of your heartbeat during jump scares in the game. Damn. That's a lot from this game, just from where we've gotten from. Just think about how many years it's been, and this is what we're at right now. And I don't know if this is true, but I honestly think this is the first light gun, full cabinet arcade game to implement these features. Now again, this game's story is very hidden, and it seems as this man in a mask is watching you play with this other girl, and we'll eventually learn that her name is Courtney at the end. Throughout the game, you find zombies, and some levels have final stage bosses. Throughout the game, though, you will find security cameras to shoot, as this will determine if you get the good or the bad ending. Just like every other game, it has 4 levels, and each level represents a fear. Prison is a fear of death. Death is a fear of the dark. Cabin is the fear of pursuit. And the lab complex is a fear of vermin. There is one more level called the Weapons Factory, Hopeless Terror, but I don't think that has a fear related to it. And each level has a jump scare factor through it as well, where it attempts to scare you, and at the end of the level, you see how many times you got scared throughout the level, called panic attacks. And if you have a certain amount of panic attacks, you will be punished. You will then get a grade of the level, and every level besides prison has a boss, and that could be from some huge Venus flytrap man to a weird lizard alligator humanoid. I don't know what's the best way. Just look. I don't know what that is, Mia. Look, what makes this game a bit different though is that your gameplay throughout depends on the entire ending of the game. Literally everything you do is how your ending will be. Remember those cameras I talked about? Remember, the less you shoot, the harder the ending of the game is going to be. Also, this includes the emergencies. Before you start the final level, it's going to tell you about these things called emergencies this final boss is going to shoot out. Now, obviously, this is based off the cameras. More cameras you shoot, the easier this is going to be. The less, the damn harder they're going to be shooting these emergencies at you. And if you miss just one emergency, that is the bad ending. And if you do obtain to shoot all of the emergencies, good job, you get the good ending. Well, now, how did this game do in an actual arcade sense and status? Well, honestly, it is hard as shit to find some info on this game, and I had the deep dive for basically everything I just told you. But according to some articles about this game, it's sold out, mainly in Dave & Buster's, and that's odd that there isn't even much info on this at all. Like, if you search up Dark Escape 4D, not even a wiki pops up for it. There's like small articles that tell you about this game, and that is it. What to seem that this would be such a successful arcade machine doesn't seem like that at all. And I really tried to do research for this game, and I went through pages and pages. I went to page 7 on Google. That's how you know this shit's serious. But honestly, if any of you can find any other information on Dark Escape 4D or a link or anything, please put that in the link in the description or message me on my Instagram, as I may be a content creator, but I cannot get all the answers myself. So now, we went through, I believe, 26 years of games, and now these were just a few to name, like I said at the beginning. And what did we learn from them all? Well, a lot of them are zombie related, and most of them had some sort of controversy, and a lot of them were hitting a new wave of video games that I think we definitely have seen nowadays with new vamped consoles and even remakes that are even more beautiful. And I still respect those huge communities that are still out there for these games, such as House of the Dead, and myself for CarnEvil. I will love that game till the day I die. Again, I couldn't find very much information on some of these games, as arcade cabinets just simply do not exist as much as they used to ever since COVID-19. And it did shut down a lot of arcades, stopping transactions from Japan to the United States as well, causing a delay on different games and causing even a lot of companies to shut down as well. I wanted to personally deep dive into horror light guns, as again, it's one of my favorite genres of video games and something I personally find a lot of interest on. And again, I want to apologize for not making a video in almost, I think, 9 to 10 months. And this video did take me a lot of time to make, mostly trying to find the research for Silent Hill and Dark Escape, because I cannot find anything. This was just a hard topic to pick, but it was fun at the end of the day. So again, if you want me to make a part 2, I believe I said 150 likes right there on the screen. If you smack that like button and subscribe, turn on post notifications. I can't promise you, but I will try to make more videos. But if you have anything else to tell me, I have been Fortune, and I hope you enjoyed the history of horror light gun shooters.